Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Parahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Parahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki. Ganga Mai Ki. Yamuna Mai Ki. Bhakti Devi Ki. Tulasi Devi Ki. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Gaur Premanande. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. So His Grace Shruti Prabhu was meant to give class today, but he's not feeling very well, so I apologize for that. And we pray that his health will not give him too much trouble going forward, and he can share his association with us. Okay, so we are in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 8, and we're looking at text 72. So let's open up with some prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityang Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhaviti Naishtiki. Okay, so let's go through the text. It's Canto 4, Chapter 8, text 72. Trirantrante Kapita Badarashana Atma Vrityanusarena Masam Ninye Richayam Harim. So you can repeat. Trirantrante Kapita Badarashana Atma Vrityanusarena Masam Ninye Richayan Harim. Trirantrante Kapita Badarashana Atma Vrityanusarena Masam Ninye Richayam Harim. Triratrantre Kapita Badarashana Atma Rityanusarena Atma Rityanusar Vishaminya Richam Harim. Give it a try. Triratrantre Kapita Padarashana Atma Rityanushurina Masamninyat Richayam Harim. Three Ratrante at the end of night. Three Ratna ante at the end of night. Kapita Padara fruits and berries. Ashana eating. Atmavriti just to preserve the body. Anusarena as it was necessary. Minimum. Masam one mouth. Ninye passed away. Archayan worshipping. Harim the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Translation. For the first month, Dhruva Maharaj ate only fruits and berries on every third day, only to keep his body and soul together, and in this way he progressed in his worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki! Kapita is a flower which is known in Indian vernacular as kayeta. We do not find an English equivalent for the name of this flower, but its fruit is generally not accepted by human beings. It is eaten by monkeys in the forest. Dhruva Maharaj, however, accepted such fruits, not for luxurious feasting, but just to keep his body and soul together. The body needs food, but a devotee should not accept foodstuff to satisfy the tongue in sense gratification. It is recommended in Bhagavad Gita that one should accept as much food as necessary to keep the body fit, but one should not eat for luxury. Dhruva Maharaj is an acharya, and by undergoing severe austerities and penances, he teaches us how one should execute devotional service. We must carefully know the process of Dhruva Maharaj's service. How severely he passed his days will be shown in later verses. We should always remember that to become a bona fide devotee of the Lord is not an easy task. But in this age, by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, it has been made very easy. But if we do not follow even the liberal instructions of Lord Chaitanya, how can we expect to discharge our regular duties in devotional service? It is not possible in this age to follow Dhruva Maharaj in his austerity, but the principles must be followed. We should not disregard the regulative principles given by our spiritual master, for they make it easier for the conditioned soul. As far as our ISKCON movement is concerned, we simply ask that one observe the 4 prohibitive rules, chant 16 rounds, and instead of indulging in luxurious eating for the tongue, simply accept prasad offered to the Lord. This does not mean that with our fasting, the Lord should also fast. The Lord should be given foodstuff which is as nice as possible. But we should not make it a point to satisfy our own tongues. As far as possible, we should accept simple foodstuff just to keep the body and soul together to execute devotional service. It is our duty to remember always that in comparison to Dhruva Maharaj, we are insignificant. We cannot do anything like what Dhruva Maharaj did for self-realization because we are absolutely incompetent to execute such service. But by Lord Chaitanya's mercy, we have been given all concessions possible for this age. So at least we should always remember that neglect of our prescribed duties in devotional service will not make us successful in the mission we have undertaken. It is our duty to follow in the footsteps of Dhruva Maharaj, for he was very determined. We should also be determined to finish our duties in executing devotional service in this life. We should not wait for another life to finish our job. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dishatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So let's just take a look at where we are in Bhagavatam and then go through the purport in more detail. So we're at the part where Dhruva Maharaj, he's left home, he's gone to the forest and he's found Narada Muni and he's engaging in these severe austerities to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead and attain his desired goal. And then Narada Muni became a little concerned about Dhruva Maharaj's father, the king. And so he went to go and visit him. And he consoled him and he explained that actually your son is doing very well, so you don't have to worry so much about him. He is successful in his mission and he's become famous, he spread your fame all over the world, and he will actually return home successful, having attained his desired goal. So there's no need to worry about Dhruva. And then Maitreya, he's explaining what's happening in this pastime. He says that the king, after being advised by Narada Muni, he gave up his worldly activities and he just started thinking of his son, Dhruva, because he was concerned about Dhruva, and then he could understand that Dhruva is such a great personality. So he started thinking about his son, and he left his other activities just to actually think about him. And then it's explained that Dhruva, in the meantime, he was taking his bath in the river Yamuna and he was fasting and he was following all the instructions that Narada Muni had given him. And now we're on the text which explains that for the first month, Dhruva Maharaj ate only fruits and berries on every third day, only to keep his body and soul together. And in this way, he progressed in his worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Narada Muni, when he's consoling the king, in text 69, he actually predicts that Dhruva will be successful in his mission. And we're seeing how determined Dhruva is. He's eating only fruits and berries on every third day, which means most of the time he's fasting, and then when he's breaking his fast, only to have fruits and berries to maintain his body. So let's just go through the purport of Srila Prabhupada and discuss. Kapita is a flower which is known in Indian vernacular as kayeta. We do not find an English equivalent for the name of this flower, but its fruit is generally not accepted by human beings. It is eaten by monkeys in the forest. Dhruva Maharaj, however, accepted such fruits, not for luxurious feasting, but just to keep his body and soul together. So we can understand that this fruit isn't so palatable actually. Only the monkeys are eating these fruits, but Dhruva Maharaj is accepting these fruits just to keep his body and soul together. And then Srila Prabhupada explains the body needs food, but a devotee should not accept foodstuff to satisfy the tongue in sense gratification. So in Mayapur Dham, after I got very sick for neglecting my body, the very first class that I got to go to, in that class they were saying, we are not the body, but the body is the body. So it's not scientific to think, okay, I am not the body, I am the soul, so I can just neglect my body. That's not actually science. That's not what is recommended in scripture, but it's even said here that the body needs food, so we take care of the body, okay? But a devotee should not accept foodstuff to satisfy the tongue in sense gratification. It is recommended in Bhagavad Gita that one should accept as much food as necessary to keep the body fit, but one should not eat for luxury. And so this is also explained in the Nectar of Instruction, the first text, Atyahara Prayasascha Prajalpo Niyamagraha, that one's devotional service is actually spoiled when he becomes too entangled in different activities. And the first one listed there is eating more than necessary. Eating more than necessary. And another one is talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. And that's, Srila Prabhupada explains, it's because when the tongue is not controlled, then the other senses cannot be controlled. So he explains in a purport in the Bhagavad Gita, it's chapter 13, text 8 to 12. He speaks a little on the subject matter of controlling the tongue and what it means to be self-controlled. He says, self-control means that one should not accept anything which is detrimental to the path of spiritual progress. One should become accustomed to this and reject anything which is against the path of spiritual progress. This is real renunciation. The senses are so strong that they are always anxious to have sense gratification. One should not cater to these demands which are not necessary. The senses should only be gratified to keep the body fit so that one can discharge his duty in advancing in spiritual life. The most important and uncontrollable sense is the tongue. If one can control the tongue, then there is every possibility of controlling the other senses. The function of the tongue is to taste and to vibrate. Therefore, by systematic regulation, the tongue should always be engaged in tasting the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna. So by engaging this tongue in Krishna's service, by tasting prasadam, by chanting the Mahamantra, then we're engaging our tongue in the service of the Lord, and only then we can start controlling our other senses actually, when we're engaging our tongue in the service of the Lord. It starts with that. And then the result of that actually is that it's explained in the Nectar of Instruction, the first text. Oh, sorry, we read the second text earlier. I made a mistake. And now the first text explains that a sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak The mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. And then we're seeing how Dhruva Maharaj, he's called an acharya because we're seeing how he's engaging in these austerities. He's engaging his tongue in the service of the Lord, and he's therefore called an acharya. So one of the previous texts has explained that he's called Prabhu or acharya for that reason, that he's controlling his senses. And then here in the purport, it's explained as well, Dhruva Maharaj is an acharya, and by undergoing severe austerities and penances, he teaches us how one should execute devotional service. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki. And then continuing in the purport, we must carefully know the process of Dhruva Maharaj's service. How severely he passed his days will be shown in later verses. We should always remember that to become a bona fide devotee of the Lord is not an easy task. But in this age, by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, it has been made very easy. So I was thinking about why it is that it's not easy to become a devotee of the Lord. It seems pretty easy. We come to the temple, we put our tilak and sari on, we chant and dance. Easy. Just become a devotee of the Lord. But as we were discussing in relation to text 69, what makes it difficult is that we're not surrendering to Krishna. It's a process. So we are trying, but we're not completely surrendering to Krishna. So it's hard to become a real devotee of the Lord, to become a bona fide devotee of the Lord. Because Krishna says, Sarva Dharma Parityagya Mamekam Sharanam Braja, abandon all varieties of religion and surrender to me. Before we can worship Krishna, we have to surrender, and that's not an easy task. It's difficult. But Lord Chaitanya has made this task much easier. He doesn't demand surrender. He says, you simply chant Hare Krishna, follow the principles. And that's all. So Lord Chaitanya is very, very merciful. And it's said that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila chapter 14 text 1, things that are very difficult to do become easy to execute if one somehow or other simply remembers Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But if one does not remember him, even easy things become very difficult. So this very difficult thing to do, to become a devotee of the Lord, becomes easy if we just remember Lord Chaitanya. And how do we remember him? By chanting. That's what we're instructed to do. We remember by chanting. But if we do not follow even the liberal instructions of Lord Chaitanya, how can we expect to discharge our regular duties in devotional service? So, especially in this particular age, it may seem to be a very difficult task for people in general to actually follow the regulative principles. Like sometimes when Srila Prabhupada was preaching, and he would explain that all you have to do is give up meat eating, intoxication, and he went through the regulative principles, and people would say that's really difficult because in Kali Yuga the religious principles which are meant to be followed are actually difficult for people in general to follow. And there's a purport in which Srila Prabhupada explains in the first canto that the Lord himself actually has given us these regulative principles, or the principles of religion. And these principles, they work fully in the age of Satya Yuga. And in the Treta Yuga, that's the age after, they're reduced by a fraction of 1/4. And then in Dwapara Yuga, they are reduced to 1/2. And then in Kali Yuga, they are reduced to 1/4 and gradually diminish to 0. And then devastation takes place. And he actually explains there that happiness in the world depends proportionately on the maintenance of the religious principles, individually or collectively. And then he says, the best part of valor is to maintain the principles despite all kinds of odds. Thus one can be happy during the span of life and ultimately return to Godhead. And Srila Prabhupada, he has also made us practicing Krishna consciousness very easy. He is instrumental, and on behalf of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he has allowed us to engage in devotional service in a very simple way. I mean, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur expected that his disciples chant 64 rounds a day, and initially this is what Srila Prabhupada expected of us as well. But then his disciples said, Prabhupada, it's not possible for us to do that. And then Srila Prabhupada said, okay, if you can't do 64, then you just do 32. And again, Prabhupada, how can we chant so much in one day? Okay, minimum 16. So he has given us this minimum amount of japa to chant per day. It's not really that much, and still we struggle. And another time, Srila Prabhupada, he said, to go back to the spiritual world, you need to be 100% Krishna conscious. And then he saw in the audience, the faces of the devotees became very grave, because everybody thought, 100% Krishna conscious. There's no way we can do that, right? Who are we? And then Srila Prabhupada, he said, okay, you just have to be 99% Krishna conscious to go back to the spiritual world. And still they thought that is too high. How will we do it? He said, okay, 90%. And then he went to 80%. Okay, 75%. And in the end he said, okay, at least you should become 78% Krishna conscious. And then he said, if you can become 78% Krishna conscious, I will take you back to Godhead. And the devotees all said, Haribol! And Prabhupada said, I have the key to the back door to the spiritual world. So my Guru Maharaj told me once that Krishna does bargaining, sometimes spiritual bargaining. So Prabhupada and Krishna are friends. And Prabhupada, if he wants, he can say to Krishna, yes, this devotee, okay, they only chanted 16 rounds, but they did that to the best of their ability, and they really tried to please you. So please, give them your mercy. So he's got that back door, he's got the secrets, and it's very mysterious. We can't really understand, but he has made us practicing very easy. So simple, so easy. And then it is written in the purport, it is not possible in this age to follow Dhruva Maharaj in his austerity, but the principles must be followed. We should not disregard the regulative principles given by our spiritual master, for they make it easier for the conditioned soul. So we can see that. I mean, Dhruva, he's fasting for 2 days and he's eating berries and fruit. We can't do that. Practically, actually, physically, we can't do that in Kali Yuga. It's not possible for us. And then Srila Prabhupada says that we should follow the regulative principles of our spiritual master. So we don't want to imitate Dhruva Maharaj. We can see him performing these austerities, and we can appreciate that he's following the instructions of Narada Muni. But the instructions we are given may not be on that same level, because it's understandable that we cannot do these things. But the instructions we are given are very, very important, and we shouldn't disregard them. We should follow nicely. And Srila Prabhupada says here that as far as our ISKCON movement is concerned, we simply ask that one observe the 4 prohibitive rules, chant 16 rounds, and instead of indulging in luxurious eating for the tongue, simply accept prasad offered to the Lord. This does not mean that without fasting, the Lord should also fast. The Lord should be given foodstuff which is as nice as possible. But we should not make it a point to satisfy our own tongues. As far as possible, we should accept simple foodstuff, just to keep the body and soul together, to execute devotional service. So, Her Grace Yamuna Prabhu was explaining that one of the very first things that Srila Prabhupada taught her was that when we cook, we cook for Krishna. We don't just cook to satisfy our own senses. We cook with understanding that Krishna is going to taste this. So when we're cooking for someone else, we want to know, what is it they like? What do they like? How do they like it? And that's why when we're cooking for Sri Sri Radharani, there's a standard. I mean, I don't cook, but those of you who do cook will know that there are certain preparations that you'll make with certain ingredients, because it's understood that this is what Krishna wants. This is the standard. So we're cooking for Krishna. And even when we're cooking at home, the meditation can be that we are cooking for Krishna. We're cooking to satisfy the Lord by keeping our body and soul together in a healthy condition so that we can execute our service. So it's also a meditation there. We're cooking for the Lord. Always we should be cooking for the Lord and not just to satisfy our own tongues. It is our duty to remember always that in comparison to Dhruva Maharaj, we are insignificant. We cannot do anything like what Dhruva Maharaj did for self-realization, because we are absolutely incompetent. So we're not just incompetent, we are absolutely incompetent to execute such service. But by Lord Chaitanya's mercy, we have been given all concessions possible for this age. So at least we should always remember that neglect of our prescribed duties in devotional service will not make us successful in the mission we have undertaken. It is our duty to follow in the footsteps of Dhruva Maharaj, for he was very determined. In a class, Srila Prabhupada explains how it is that we can increase our determination. So he spoke, it was the 23rd of March 1968 in San Francisco, and he was saying that actually to increase our determination, we need to practice celibacy. So, the brahmacharis, they're practicing celibacy, but the grihasthas are also practicing celibacy, because they're controlling their sex life and only using it for the propagation of Krishna conscious children. And again, going back to what we were saying in the beginning, the aspect of controlling sex life can only really be done if we're practicing chanting and controlling the tongue. Once we're controlling the tongue, then the genitals and all of the other aspects of our life will also be able to be more controlled. So it has to start there, chanting the holy names, accepting prasadam, and then the other things will follow. We'll be able to practice with more determination. And then Srila Prabhupada says that we should also be determined to finish our duties in executing devotional service in this life. We should not wait for another life to finish our job. So we might think, I might not make it in this life, so I'll just carry on in the next life. It's no problem. I'll just, kind of try, and then I'll carry on, continue in the next life. What's the problem? But actually Prabhupada is saying we should do it in this life. We should make our mission in this life to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why should we waste any time? Why should we waste any time? We have already wasted thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, thousands of lifetimes in Maya. And now that we have this opportunity, we should really try. And I was hearing a class by my Guru Maharaj in which he was saying that as soon as we don't follow the instructions of our spiritual master, we become completely useless. So what is that very first instruction that Guru gives us actually? It's to chant and to follow the principles. And if we're not doing that, we become useless. We were not able to serve properly. But then on the other hand, if we do actually follow, then we'll find great success in our lives. We'll be able to actually make spiritual progress and achieve the highest destination of life. And there's this really beautiful verse which explains that it's Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 14, text number 58. It says, "For one who has accepted the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of the cosmic manifestation and is famous as Murari, the enemy of the demon Mura, the ocean of the material world is like the water contained in a calf's hoof print." And Srila Prabhupada explains about this verse that when we take shelter in the lotus feet of the Lord, then everything becomes easier. Then even crossing this great ocean of nescience, it's exactly like crossing the hoof print created by a calf. And that's very small, actually. So just by taking shelter, for a devotee who is taking shelter, then these difficulties which seem very great for a materialist become just small obstacles to overcome by the mercy of the Lord if we're taking shelter in Him. And he says also on this that a goal for the devotee, for such a devotee who has taken shelter, is Vaikunta, the place where there is no material misery, not the place where there is danger at every step. So here in the material world, it's a very dangerous place. It's a very dangerous place. But then he also explains that our actual duty is to carry out the supreme order of the personality of Godhead. If we are fixed in our determination to carry out the supreme order of the Lord, we are always secure regardless of where we are situated, whether in hell or in heaven. So wherever we are in the material world, whether we're in Tapaloga, Swargaloga, or in the hellish planets, or here on earth, it doesn't matter. If we're taking shelter in the Lord and we understand that that's our duty, then we're actually always safe. That is our safety, that is our security. It says, if we are fixed in our determination, then we'll have that security. But for a devotee, no difficulty in material existence is too much. If we've taken shelter and we understand that it's the perfection of our lives to serve Krishna, then what difficulty is there that's too much? There isn't really. I mean, what is a little difficulty? What is a little austerity for the opportunity for us to eternally serve our spiritual masters, for us to eternally serve Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his mission? Tiny. It's not a lot. And we were reading here in text 69, the purport, that the perfection of the highest mission of life is actually to satisfy the Supreme Lord and go back home, back to Godhead. That's the perfection of the highest mission of life. So the highest mission of life is to satisfy the Supreme Lord. And then the perfection of that highest mission is to go back to the spiritual world so that you can serve even better, so that you can serve with no deviation and you can serve in the most pleasing way. But the way that we satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as we had discussed, is through Vaishnava Seva, because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that Vaishnava Seva is more superior and glorious than Vishnu Seva. And how do we serve the Vaishnavas? By following their orders, by following their instructions, by following the instructions of our spiritual masters. Only once we have taken shelter in those instructions and we make that our life mission, then we can actually start to be pleasing to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that very first instruction is to chant. And we are given many instructions to facilitate that as well, and to assist others in their chanting. Let's look at the example of Srila Prabhupada, how he was given just a few instructions. He met his spiritual master only a few times, but he took those instructions to heart and he fulfilled those instructions, and now look at what he has done with those instructions. Just those few. He made those instructions his life mission. So he was instructed to print books, and now we have so many books by Srila Prabhupada all over the world, thousands and thousands and thousands of books. He was instructed to preach in the Western world. Now we have centers all over the world, and so many of us have the opportunity to practice Krishna consciousness because Srila Prabhupada made those instructions his life mission. And it appears to us that he had difficulties to face as well. They were there, many, but nothing deterred him from following Guru's order, and then all success came in the mission of fulfilling that order. So for us as well, we have many instructions to follow. So primarily, we all have the same instructions, the 4 rigs, 16 rounds, and the different principles that we follow to try and facilitate all of that. But there are other personal instructions to help us facilitate that as well. We get to meet our spiritual masters many times, and we get many instructions. So if we really take shelter in those instructions, we can be so instrumental in fulfilling the mission of our spiritual masters, and we can achieve perfection very easily, very easily, actually. And I just wanted to end with something Srila Prabhupada said in Bombay on the 19th of December 1972. Krishna does not like to see his devotees suffer or become frustrated or depressed on his behalf. No. If we remain always faithful to him, working very hard despite all difficulties, very quickly you will meet Krishna face to face. You may know it for certain. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki! Are there any questions or comments or corrections? Jai Sachinandana. Do you have anything? Yeah, thank you. Can we get the mic for him? The mic. Over there. Yeah, you can get it for him.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. On short notice, you made a very nice presentation. You're speaking about determination. And I was thinking of the 6th chapter Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna speaks of the Ashtanga process, and the first 2 steps of that is Yama Niyama, which means like rules and prohibitions. And the first prerequisite is that one has to be celibate. Krishna is saying like that. Brahmacharya, celibacy. He said one should not eat too much, one should not eat too little. Yes. One should not sleep too much, one should not sleep too little. Yeah. Then Arjuna, having heard, he said, no, it's impossible. This task of controlling the mind, where all the whole process is to bring the mind under control. But Arjuna rejected it, and he said, no, it's very difficult. It's easier to control the wind than to control the mind. And Krishna, he kind of agrees. He says, yes, I agree with that. But by suitable detachment and practice, one can. And so, he spoke of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the age of Kali. He has come, and we know the age of Kali is worst of all the ages. It's a very, very difficult age, and it's sometimes insurmountable to the mind. The mind is a very powerful entity, one of the most powerful entities. And the business of the mind is to accept and reject all the time. And in a day we can go through millions of data of accepting, rejecting. Then mind is, Krishna is saying, can be your best friend or your worst enemy. The mind is like that. So how to bring the mind under control? In this age of, it is very difficult to practice the Ashtanga. There is no suitable, as at the time when Arjuna was 5,000 years ago, it was a little more conducive for that type of, but even then Arjuna rejected it. Isn't the Ashtanga process? So what we speak of now we, everything is very commercialized. There's no forests, and people are not very, they're lazy. One of the symptoms of this age, people are lazy. The mind is always disturbed. So how can we practice such? So there's one concession for this age is that the holy name is the only means of God realization, of bringing the mind under. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance was there for that purpose, to propagate the. And if we take shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and follow the Sankirtan process, and then and very seriously practice that process of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and follow regular principles as mentioned in the purport, and gradually one will become perfect. Like what Dhruva achieved, one can do it in one lifetime. Dhruva to spend a lot of months of austerity, very austere type of, but still, in this age, there's some concession. We can, chant holy names and take prasadam and engage in the Sankirtan movement and go back home, back to Godhead, the perfection. The determination, maybe it seems, we may think it's very difficult. Coming out, the conditioning is so deep. As you said, lifetimes of taking bath and carrying all this baggage of karmic reactions. Very, very difficult. And Prabhupada in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in that same chapter, Ashtanga Yoga, in one of the purports, I think it's text 74, he gives the story of the sparrow. The sparrow is just a little bird, isn't it? And in terms of determination, he said we should remember the story of the sparrow who laid her eggs on the shores of the ocean. And at some point the ocean came and took her eggs away. So the sparrow became very distraught and demanded her eggs from the ocean. And she even threatened the ocean, I will drain you beak by beak. And the ocean laughed. He said, what can you do? You're just a little sparrow. How long will you take to do that? Drain beak by beak, drain the ocean just to get your eggs. Meanwhile, the story of the determination of the sparrow reached Garuda. Garuda is the king of the eagle bird. Is the carrier of Narayan, Vishnu, isn't the bird carrier. So he heard of that, and he was very impressed by this little bird, the determination. And he approached the ocean. He said, if you don't give back the eggs, I will take on the duty of the sparrow. And the ocean became very scared. And he returned the eggs in that way. The moral of this is determination. God helps those who help themselves. So in terms of determination, we should, even though we may think it's so difficult or insurmountable, but we should, Rupa Goswami mentions that in the Nectar of Instruction. Utsaha nishchahaidarya tat kama pravata. Enthusiasm, determination, patience, and we will get there. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Jai Sachinandana Prabhu. I forgot about that pastime, about the sparrow. I'm so grateful that you reminded me about that. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for sharing everything else as well. Does anyone else have anything? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki, Anante Koti Vaishnava Vrindi ki, Gaur Pramanande.
Hare Krishna.